What's up everybody, how's it going? So today I'm going to review one of the probably most interesting language learning platform that I've ever encountered, and that is Lingoda. Lingoda is a language learning platform in which you sign up for your classes depending on your level, depending on your interests, or the times available. It claims to have 24/7 class access. I definitely would say it's a few major steps up from Duolingo. It's closer to italki, I would say, except it is more engaged. So with italki, you would choose the dates and times that work for you. With Lingoda, you can certainly do that as well if you wanted to do your own kind of personal, either private or group class. But another really interesting thing that Lingoda offers is they have two challenges. One is the Lingoda Sprint and one is the Super Sprint. And basically what these challenges are like bets against you, which sounds harsh, but wait. Basically what that means is if you complete the sprint or the super sprint, you do all the classes, you show up on time, your Wi-Fi is good, you do the work, teachers are happy. It's depending on which challenge you accepted, you can get either half or all of your money back. That's insane. And you might think, well, gee, I'm a good college student, or gee, I'm accountable and I showed up to classes on time. But wait, the Lingoda Sprint is 30 classes spread over the course of 2 months, and the Super Sprint is 60 classes over the course of 2 months. And the catch is that you can't do more than one class a day. So that means you're doing either one class every other day or one class about every day. That's a lot. And for each class being a full hour, that can be tricky. That's a commitment there. The other thing I will say is that at this current time, they only offer French, German, Spanish, and English. So it's kind of a limited collection of languages. If you're into more niche or even like different EU languages, then I'm sorry, this is not the one for you. So I did the Sprint, which is 30 classes over the course of 2 months, and I did that for the months of October and November. And here's what I liked about it. Even if you weren't going to do the challenges, if you decided to do private classes or group classes, the most amount of people you're going to have in a group class is 5, I believe, including yourself. 5 and a teacher. So you're going to have a lot of talking time. It feels more one-on-one, more personal to you. You get to know the teacher, although not really, but I'll go into that later. Another thing is there's lots of options for classes. If you're in a more advanced level, if you're just past the beginner stage, kind of intermediate, advanced, there's a huge variety of topics. The first class I ever took was about kids' toys, and there were classes about writing biographies and celebrities and art and how to interview in a German company. It's an interesting arrangement of topics that they cover, I will say that. Some of the classes were genuinely interesting, but there were also things that I'm not personally as invested in, like sports. Another thing I really liked about it is that there are a lot of options for teachers. I talked about it being very engaging, very personal, and the thing is that I stand by that, but you could definitely go each class without repeating a teacher. Everyone has different availabilities, different interests, the teachers have different times, different classes, blah, 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 blah. Some are full, some are not. It's not a personal thing. You might do introductions at the start of the class, but once that class ends, once the screen goes black, you could potentially never see that teacher again. So it's not an investment in personal time, which is one thing I don't like so much, but that is a give and take with these kind of go by your own schedule kind of programs. Another note about the teachers, I will say, there was one class where we did talk about like children's toys and childhood. There was a male teacher and there were only 3 other guys in the class. I was the only woman. I don't know how we got onto this conversation, and the teacher singled me out and asked me if I ever planned on having children, to which I frankly said no, because I don't. Not really any of his business. And then he proceeded to tell me, well, you're still young, you might change your mind. That was a little disheartening, and he didn't ask any of the other guys whether they felt like having kids or berated them for saying no. A little salty about that, no big deal. There's such a huge amount of teachers that like I picked female teachers from then on out, and I didn't have any sort of confrontational whatever. It wasn't a big deal. Another thing I really liked about the Lingoda Sprint is that the course materials have access to them before and after. So most classes have they call it like pre-work or pre-assignments or whatever to do before class, I think is the actual button that you have to click. And basically, for the most part, that includes a list of vocabulary terms that they'll be discussing. It includes a little activity of test your knowledge kind of thing, which I found was helpful. And they had the slideshows, which I never felt the need to go into those before class, but I had them if I wanted. And then once you're finished with the class, you can go back into those materials. You can see in the slideshow where the teacher made comments, did the exercises with the class, all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was kind of neat. So onto the stuff I didn't like so much. So as you can imagine with the sprint and the super sprint, they are super rigid when it comes to being on time, leaving early, rescheduling, all that kind of stuff. And for me, half the time I don't really know what my schedule is going to look like, so it's really hard to plan like that far in advance. After a week, I believe you can't reschedule or cancel a class without missing a credit and then losing the chance to earn your money back. That could be problematic. If your Wi-Fi is shaky, that could be problematic. The teachers themselves are very understanding, so if you come 3, 4, 5 minutes late, it's usually going to be okay. But basically, you can't cancel or reschedule a class if it's less than a week from the start date of that class, and that could be a problem. The other thing, and this is a major thing, but the learning style is basically PowerPoint learning. I'm sure those of you who went through the American education system, you got it drilled into your heads that if you create a PowerPoint, you have a couple bullet points, but you don't have paragraphs and paragraphs, and you certainly don't read off of them. This is kind of what Lingoda does. You have a PowerPoint. They don't have the expectation that you're all going to go through the PowerPoint in its entirety, which is nice, but it is very much like, okay, now it's your turn to read, and now it's your turn to read, now it's your turn to read, let's do an exercise. And I will say, of the teachers who really stick to the PowerPoint, those were my least favorite classes. I like the ones that could jump off the page, that started talking about personal stories, that asked people about their personal stories, just not their babies. I will say I understand the structure, they have to find some way to standardize this across a huge amount of people, a huge amount of teachers and students. So I understand why they chose PowerPoint. Another thing that I wasn't a huge fan of was that the classes, as I said, were an hour long. Those with PowerPoint learning can start to feel very lengthy. I found myself twiddling my thumbs, I found myself doodling on my page, and then bringing it back to the public school education that I was mentioning, it's very easy to just never touch the material again. Once you're done with a class, you don't, there's no testing, there's no nothing. They don't ask you about the grammar in a week. And I find for language learning, it's really good to revisit and build, and that's not something that Lingoda does. But of course, I gotta say it again, that comes with the personalized, non-linear class structure. I mean, I don't see how you can have a platform like this in the way that it is without doing that. So I understand it. I will say, though, there's a happy little fuck you at the end. If you do sign up for Lingoda, there's a clause that's buried very, very deep in the terms and agreements that states that basically they're gonna keep your credit card information and automatically sign you on for the next Lingoda sprint or the next set of classes. And so I woke up a week or two after my Lingoda sprint and I noticed that in my bank account and I was not thrilled. It also states in a helpful little addendum that there are no refunds. So beware of that. It is super shady and I hated it, and I did get my refund because I was quite proud of myself for this one. I went and I rallied and I left bad reviews because, girl, I need that $100. I had to fully delete my entire account in order to get them to stop billing me. It was so rude of them. So I no longer have access to those materials. It felt like a breakup, honestly. It was not a good time. You're probably wondering whether or not I completed the Lingoda sprint. I did not. I missed a couple too many. Actually, no, it was a scheduling error. I did this thing, I finally planned myself in advance, I scheduled the class, and then a week later, I also scheduled a shift at my job. For the same day. There was no way I was gonna escape the shift once I signed on to it, so it was kind of just like whatever. I had to miss it. It was really unfortunate, but after that, my motivation for Lingoda kind of dwindled. I found myself missing a lot of classes, and now I was paying for the classes, so careful with that one, Chief. So all in all, I will say I think it's a really good way to practice your speaking and communication skills with an extra little challenge. If you're like me and you need that extrinsic motivation, if it's not like teachers or grades, then money is a good motivating factor. I took this course as an intermediate speaker. I don't really know how they would do it for beginners. I was snooping around a little bit before I got my account deleted, and it looks like the structure is a little bit different for beginners, which gave me hope because I don't know how a beginner learner could survive in the structure that was given to the intermediate folks. If you took Lingoda as a beginner speaker, please let me know how that was. I am really interested. So knowing what I know now, I'm not sure I would do it again. It didn't work for me in the way that I learn, so I would recommend it to others as, you know, a trial thing, but I probably wouldn't go back to it. And it's worth mentioning, although you might have guessed, that this is purely based off of my own experiences. I'm not being paid to talk to you about this. I just thought it was an interesting little platform that I wanted to make people more aware of. Even if you don't succeed in the challenges, even if you do pay the full amount, you're not taking other classes about the language, you have time on your hands and you don't really know what to do regarding your language learning, I would say Lingoda is a pretty good way to go. It'll keep you on your toes, it'll keep you engaged for the most part. It was certainly better than Duolingo. Again, if you're like a self-studier, you don't have a course you're taking, I think it's a really good way to go. So yeah, that's just my little chat for today. I hope you give it a try if it sounds interesting to you. And if you do, let me know how it goes. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm always checking my phone for new notifications. It's like a compulsion, but no worries. I am safe and happy. And I love you all, and bye.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.